Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening. Welcome back. I have been told to feature more mid-level providers, as they are colloquially called. Why are they called that, by the way?
I just think because the doctors are like the
It's a little bit insulting.
high-level provider.
Because you're mid.
And we're mid-levels because we're not doctors.
It's a little bit insulting if I were an NP. Are you okay with that term, or do we need to change that?
No, I mean, in all honesty, our education doesn't compare to the doctors.
Right.
So I don't think it's misleading.
Do you know how many? Shows you the hubris of some people, right? Or maybe the ambition. I don't know. You guys be the judge. I'm not gonna judge. NPs, PAs say, hey, do I need an MD to be PI? Like, why can't I be the PI? And they want to argue with me that nowhere in the FDA does it say the PI must be an MD. And I tell them you're right, but no sponsor is going to give you that study either. Like, at the end of the day, it's the sponsor is going to decide. Like, do you feel like you would be able? And you've now done research for almost 4 years, but what are your thoughts on this? On NPs being PIs maybe one day?
Yeah, I think for a mid-level provider to be a PI, if I were the sponsor, right, I'm investing so much money into this study that I want the best to come out of it, right? So if a mid-level will be PI, I would definitely think that mid-level would have to have X amount of experience in the clinical setting and then X amount of experience in the research setting before they allow them to be PIs. And then even if it happens, I would think that the mid-level would have to have very close guidance from the medical monitor from each study. So that's the only way I think right now in my mind that will be safe and a good approach for that. Now, I don't disagree that we can be sub-Is and then have an MD as the PI because of, again, their knowledge, their education, their schooling. It's way more than what a mid-level is typically.
Right. And now help me understand, and this is where we get into the nuances of specializations. So we're multi-specialty here. So we do, we work with a pulmonologist. We do respiratory studies. Correct. We work with a psychiatrist. We do psych.
Correct. That
same psychiatrist is also a neurologist, and he wants us to start doing multiple sclerosis and things like that.
Correct.
You're the sub-I on all these things, but your background prepared you basically like internal medicine?
Yeah, family medicine. Yeah.
So how does an NP specialize formally?
Formally, the only specialty that I can recall right on top of my head that requires like a specialty certification or schooling will be Psych MP.
That's it.
That's far as I remember. Yes. Okay. Besides that, you don't really specialize, but you just get hired under a cardiologist, a neurologist, a dermatologist, and it's more like on-the-job training. It's not like a doctor. Whenever they do residency, they have to do residency for their specialty, and that's how they become the specialty, whatever specialty they have. As mid-levels, it doesn't go that way. It's you're just pretty much hire whatever. I know mid-levels are higher under neurology, under nephrology, cardiology, and then just specialize, if you will, in that, just because the provider, the doctor are training them, and that's all they see, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense, because it does make a lot of sense, because now for research, there are even less rules, right? There's less like standardizations and less rules than in anything else. So like, for example, our first study was a derm study.
Derm, yeah.
And so because you've done psoriasis and atopic derm studies, now you are a sub-I with derm experience, right?
Correct.
And now you've done metabolic studies with our other PI, so you're a NP with metabolic. And same thing with psych now. Correct. You've been doing, you're a rater, psychometric rater. So now you're slowly adding all these specializations on your resume
Correct.
as a NP. Do you think that would ever have value for you going back to non-research and saying, hey, like, I know you work for someone right now, but let's say you wanted to switch job and work for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Would your experience with psych or derm possibly help you get hired by one of those specialty clinics that you didn't have that experience in the past? Maybe that gave you an advantage?
I think it would, especially if the environment's competitive. Like if I really want to go into a neurology job and there's multiple applicants and the rest of the applicants have not been exposed to neurology, only the general family medicine. And if I present, my background in neurology, it would. Now in the psych, I don't think it would help as far as I know. Because be a psych NP, you have to be a psych NP and be certified as
That's
one.
The only one, right?
That's the only
you're
one.
aware of.
That's the only one that I'm aware of.
Okay.
The rest, it's just like pretty much like on the job training after you're an NP. Most of them will want you to have some experience as a family medicine or family provider, but not necessarily. Now with the shortages that we have, there's a lot of openings. So, but also there's a lot of PA schools, NP schools, and I have not heard if medical schools are gonna like bump up the graduates, but I think it's gonna get to a point where there won't be as much need, and there will be the jobs will be way more competitive, I think.
Did you read? Speaking of medical school, did you read that recent article? This was for doctors coming out of med school, but maybe mid-level provide. I don't know. I would ask you your opinion. They were saying that the new generation of MDs, like the Gen Z, the MDs coming out of med school, Gen Zs are saying they want a work-life balance, and then some of the old school doctors are like, well, that's not part of the job description of being an MD. Is this sentiment also happening at the mid-level provider level with the newer generation? Like, they're coming out with more debt than ever, but they want to work the least. Well, generally speaking, I mean, you hate to throw everyone in the same category, but
I can speak for nurse practitioners. Normally, before you become a nurse practitioner, you have to be a nurse before. So most nurses will have to work, full time to support their family. So I have not seen that personally with nurse practitioners, but generally speaking, I would say the newer generations want to work less and get the same pay or even more pay. That's a general statement, not just in medical, but in the other hand, don't we all, right?
Yeah, and on the other hand, you kind of need to, because inflation is kind of running away from us.
Yeah. So, but no, I have not personally seen that.
Okay.
I mean, I read articles or heard others say it, but I haven't really see it. I do see it though, because I was I've been in managing roles in the past. I have seen how the culture changed, or the mentality, if you will, changed a little bit, in the sense of the effort that goes into the job, if you will, or the expectation of the compensation, or it is different from when I started working. Like when I started working as a nurse, I graduated in 2009, but I was a nurse assistant before that. It's like you go in, you go out, and you just work. But now the mentality might be changing from what I read, from what I heard, but I have not really seen it, like, in real life, if you will.
Okay. Yeah. No anecdotal stories, but it's a possibility.
I think it's a possibility. I mean, if people are saying that, maybe. But as far as nurse practitioners goes, I have not seen that.
Okay.
Neither with me or my friends or the new grads that I that I seen.
Okay. Now, shifting gears a bit. So, you and I just came back from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
We went to meet with a private equity firm. We're looking to possibly be a platform for research as a site network.
Correct.
What are like? I'm kind of aware of this, being an insider. You're more of an outsider coming
Correct.
in. So, I'm curious to get your take on private equity's demand for research and consolidating it into private practice, because that seems to be the big unlock. Is you've got private practices or even large health systems, right? You've got those consolidated. Guess who consolidated those? It's private equity.
Mm-hmm.
Now the only thing left to consolidate are the research sites.
Correct.
So guess who's consolidating those? Private equity. What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm sure you've seen the consolidation on the private practice side,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe how, like, your thoughts as a mid-level provider, because you have perspectives as a mid-level provider that we don't have, that are unique to the business dynamics of that, as it applies to what's going on in research right now.
Yeah, well, I have seen how the hospitals are not trying to just be hospitals; they're trying to become what they call a healthcare system. Meaning they have the hospital, but then they have specialties and the doctors or the providers in the community, and they become like a big system.
You're talking like Sunset Health or like
Like just to mention a few, like you can have Banner, Scripps. They
Gotcha.
have the hospital, but they also have all the specialty clinics and family medicine. So
Gotcha.
they own they is all the whole system there. So once I talked to somebody like to that it's involved in that process, and what the reasoning behind that is, that's how they can get more money out of it. Meaning, I know I'm changing a little bit of gears, but I think I'm gonna come back to the actual question. Meaning, just like like a big chain that sells groceries. If you buy a million apples, you're gonna get a better price than they just buy a 10, 20 to just
More pricing power.
more pricing. So that's one of the reasons why they do it. And now I can see that happening on the research part of it too. And it's easier, like if we are not isolated clinic or research clinic, you only have access to a certain amount of studies that you apply for. Now, if you're a part of a community of clinics, now we can share. We can be to the sponsor like, hey, you know what? We have 3 other clinics in 3 other different states.
Mm-hmm.
We can share the same test, the same study, and then we'll have each other as a resource for this study as well. And so I can see how diversifying the system, if you will, like a platform, it will be very beneficial to share studies, to be resources for them.
Right.
And then from what I see in these PE people, they're big not just because they're big because they have a good structure. So structuring all the clinics, holding people or clinics accountable to their the progression on the goals and metrics and all that. I think that's going to impact the industry, and I believe in a good way, and it will be an incentive for isolated clinics to join a certain platform because it will have more resources.
Yeah.
So it's been everywhere. Locally, a clinic was bought out from a clinic from a firm from outside of Yuma, and I didn't know that. I was like, oh, so now they're owned by the same, even though they're keeping their names. So when you thought that maybe X provider owned this clinic, now they don't really own it, but they're part of this group or system.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, with private equity, a lot of the times the branding remains the same locally. So they even told us, like, outsiders wouldn't even notice. But the insider, unless you wanted it to be noticed. I know from us, just without even getting involved in private equity, every subsequent PI we've added since our first, Dr. Smith, became easier to get studies, except with the exception of one. He's a cardiologist, and we're trying. But the idea of does this PI have experience goes away because you get the study for Dr. Smith, right? Now any specialist that you bring on after becomes a sub-I for that study. So now they join with research experience under their belt. Now they may not have the experience for like a particular indication,
correct,
but it's still a lot better than not having any research experience at all. It's a lot easier for a sponsor to say, okay, while you may not have atrial fibrillation experience, you at least have cardiovascular disease experience, diabetes, like you have research experience. We're okay. It's easier for us to give you a study that way than you don't have any experience at all.
And I think on top of that is our in this case Dr. Smith, which is awesome. He would be a sub-I on that study. So the sponsor feel even more comfortable. Like, so you have somebody that has had quite a bit of experience. And not only that, most of these sponsors, we work with them already on a different study. So now they know our side that we're able to or capable to do a
and those
a
are
good
the
job.
Synergies really that I think even locally, like we're not even a private equity platform yet. Just locally, we already are able to provide some of these economies of scale that on a larger national scale would be more evident.
Correct. Then also the first study for a brand new PI would be a very difficult study, like a super hard study.
First one we got, remember that?
Yeah, I remember. Because they will have to get the one study that nobody else wants, but then they do need more patients. So X study is awarded to a PI with no experience just because they're probably the only ones available, you know, if that makes sense. So, but I can speak for us. After that, just getting better studies, and right now our studies are pretty good. Like I'm very happy, and then with the studies we're getting, I mean, every study will be difficult. No, there's not one study that will be super easy, but at least there are better studies than others.
Now there is a couple things to expand upon here. So, and I want to get your take on medical spas. I don't want to forget that. So we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Because I'm curious, and I know a lot of NPs are looking for extra ways to make revenue. I think research is one of the ways they can make alternative income.
Correct.
I think in many ways it would be easier than a medical spa, provided they are lucky enough to have a research company in their community that's open to networking with them.
Correct.
But do you think this consolidation, forget research, just healthcare in general, is good or bad for the mid-level providers' pay? Because there's economies of scale work in both directions. It's a two-way street. So in certain underserved areas, it's harder to get a mid-level provider and market dynamics. But in other places, there's supply and demand. Like I know in Orange County, there's no shortage of
nothing.
So in many ways, their salaries are getting squeezed. And what you're seeing is this need and this thirst to explore what's next. And that's where you're getting all these medical spas and you're getting all these other kind of things. So all these topics are related. But what is your take on consolidation and mid-level providers' salaries? Like the net effects, I think.
Yeah. Not sure of the exact number, but I know or I heard actually, because I don't do billing, and I never have done billing on the family practice. But if I'm not mistaken, the visits are the revenue that each visit generates is different. It for, let's say, for a MD or DO, it's 100%. I'm just saying a number. It's more, and then for a mid-level, it's less. So some areas you'll see that the mid-level signs the note, and then it's co-signed by the MD, like overseeing what was done. And some states is because it's the law, like California. I think mid-levels cannot be independent.
No, they can now.
They cannot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where it was not the case, they couldn't be. Now I guess now they can. In Arizona, we have all. I mean, as far as I remember, we have always been independent. So we didn't necessarily need a co-signature from an MD, but some places do that. One for safety, another one I believe is for revenue. Okay, so the revenue the mid-level generates is less than MD, so obviously the pay is also less. I'm not sure of the numbers, but I know it's quite a bit of less. Now, given when there's more supply than demand, I can definitely see how the payments for the mid levels will like either decrease or stay the same.
Yeah.
And that's from what I'm seeing in the near future. Now we live in an underserved area where the demand is still higher than the supply.
Right.
But now with MP schools accepting some MP students with hardly any experience as a nurse, and then a lot of MP schools being online, there's a lot of MPs graduating more and more and more. So I can definitely see that becoming an issue. I think it will become an issue. I have coworkers or MPs that they don't think it will become an issue because it is true that a lot of MPs or PAs and doctors are graduating, but it's also true that a lot of retiring. So they seem to believe that there is not gonna be a problem. I see otherwise.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, that's just me.
Especially with
guessing.
this new administration. And
yeah,
we're talking about cutting things
and yeah. So the economy, it's hard on everybody. So not just because somebody gets a little bit more money than others. Usually the little bit more you have, the little bit more you spend. So everybody is always trying to find ways to get more money. Like here I am, I have my full-time job.
well, that's why you started with us to begin with,
yeah,
right?
I wanted a second job. I needed extra income, and that's why I started here, right? So this medical spas or weight loss clinics, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, what are your take on that? Can an NP own that?
Yeah. But I think it's dependent on the state laws.
On the state.
Like,
yeah,
again,
yeah.
in Arizona, we're independent and we can. So what's the beautiful part on that? Whomever is doing it, they see a lot of revenue because it's only cash patients. You don't go through insurance. In a clinic, you submit the claim to get paid, and that can take months for you to get paid on the patient you see today.
Yeah.
So it's cash at the time of service, and then the patients know they're going to have to pay.
It's a different clientele, right?
It's a different clientele.
Do you think healthcare is shifting towards that, or do you think it's going to?
Nowadays everything is how we look. Not everything, but a lot of it is how we look. Meaning I have a wrinkle here, I want to get rid of it, so there's Botox. That's the answer, right? Or I have extra pounds, I can lose them, so there is this weight loss medications. So it all depends in what sense. It all depends on what insurance covered and don't cover. Like there are medications, some of these GLP-1s are approved for weight loss, but insurances are not covering them. So the minute insurances decides to cover these medications, all these weight loss clinics are not going to have any patients, or very little patients.
Or the minute they go generic or something.
Or
but then there's always the next best thing. Now you're going to have a triple agonist.
Yeah.
Instead of a dual, and they're always looking for something.
They always are. But if something is available that it's going to work for them, somebody that has insurance, and if it's free for them or with a minimal copay, they're not gonna pay, you know.
Yeah.
So I think there's always that risk. I heard of a particular insurance that starting the year they're gonna start covering GLP-1s for weight loss. It's a private insurance, but you know, those patients will not pay for that medication. They will just go through their insurance, right? So there's always that. I think anything that is aesthetics will not be covered by insurance ever,
right.
just because it's aesthetics. So that's a good market. And yeah, I mean, I personally even have thought about that myself. You know, maybe in the future I'll just open up a clinic for.
What do you think is better now that you've done research? Do you think if more mid-level providers knew? Sorry, Daniel, I told you when I get Jaime on, man, this is gonna be a long one.
I was told it was 15 minutes.
I was going for 20, and I know we're like double that at least. But my internal clock is ticking. But now, how many mid-level providers, knowing what you know now, okay, and it's only 4 years of experience, not like you're a veteran. Knowing what you know now, how many NPs do you think, percentage-wise, would do this? No questions asked, like this is a no-brainer. Knowing what you know now.
I mean, if they have good understanding of what research is, I would think the number will be probably 20%. It's low.
It's low still.
It's low. 20, 30% maybe.
So from every 10 you talk to, only 3 would say yes.
If they're well, if we educate them well.
Yeah, let's say knowing what you know now, all your concerns have been answered.
Okay.
How many of them, if I talk to 10, hey, you want to join our site network?
Oh, okay. So knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
4 to 5 maybe.
So it's still the majority would say no.
Yes, because you can just rent a place, and you can start doing Botox or GLP-1s or. I
see. So that low hanging fruit is still more appealing.
What happens is, you know, in research, like we didn't pay ourselves for over a year.
Yeah, it was like a year. Right?
Yeah, it was like a year.
You would remember better than me.
Yeah,
I don't. How long was it?
And it was like a minimal payment. You know, it wasn't much at all.
Yeah.
So we didn't really start getting a livable pay, if you will,
until like year 2, maybe.
Until year 2, yeah. So for those 2 years, you're just investing, building the fundamentals.
And it's not like it builds to like now it's a little more sustainable. It goes from like nothing to a little bit to more than I need now.
yeah.
That's how it goes.
So for a lot of mid-levels, I mean, we'll have families. And then many of us don't have the entrepreneur mentality. I mean, I'll be honest, you know, many of us have I'm going to be an employee mentality, and then I don't have to worry about anything else but to go to work and do my job, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying if they open up a clinic now, they're going to start earning money day one. Well, with every patient that comes through the door, they'll get money right away.
Even if it's a private practice / med spa.
I mean, the private practice will be different because they have to, I mean, either on the med spa, they have to build up their patients, but then when they build insurances, it will be like I'm not sure the average, but I think it's at least 1 to 3 months before you get paid on what you just built for today, right?
So maybe a good platform for a private equity firm out there, because you know how they operate, like some buy a lot of veterinary clinics, some buy a lot of urgent care, and a lot of them are geographically concentrated. Maybe another good platform for private equities to consider are medical spas, because if you want to plug in research, it's easier to do it that way too.
Like if you're talking to the PE firms, now that's some volatile
advice for the PEs.
Yeah, that's volatile too, you know, just because of what I just mentioned.
I see.
Meaning if the GLP-1s become generic or approved by insurance, there goes that.
Because what's the
route.
majority of the stuff done at these med spas? Like pellets,
I think pellets,
like hormonal. For those that don't know, it's like testosterone, estrogen,
yeah,
right? Or
Yeah.
not estrogen?
yeah, the testosterone, I think, and so pellets, Botox, hyaluronic acid, GLP-1 for weight loss. I think some of them
Stem
do
cell?
phentermine. I don't know about stem cells.
RFK wants to look now, and maybe this is a teaser for a future podcast, but he mentioned a few things in his tweet.
Mhm.
He said psychedelics. He said we are going to re-examine
Okay.
because he believes the FDA is corrupt and on purpose blocked psychedelics. And a few months ago, there was a very big psychedelic drug with promising results that was denied by the FDA for PTSD.
Oh.
So he's looking at that and saying it's time to re-examine. So there's like MedSpa now might get into like these kind of psychedelic.
Yeah, that or
Peptides was another
peptide. Yeah.
that he brought up, and nutraceutical. So more focus on the food.
Yeah, that I think that's gonna be big if they do follow through the we known for a long time the colorants that the food have.
Yeah.
They're not harmful.
Yeah.
And Europe has banned quite a bit of them, quite a bit of chemicals. So in the US we haven't gone there, but if they do, everything should fall like dominoes. Like maybe obesity rates will go down just by cutting off all these other chemicals. I mean, we don't know. This is a lot of things that we have to see what's going to happen. But I think if that do happen, then that's why I was saying that's very volatile.
But that takes generations to.
It would take time. It would take
because
definitely take
if
time.
you see from the obesity studies we have patients that know they are getting the real drug, but they don't want to do it because even though it's working, they like to have their food.
Yeah.
And that's something that's not so
problem.
easily fixed.
Yeah, to change the mind is the hardest.
That's why I think it's generational.
Yeah, I have I know people that they were told, hey, you're diabetic, you need to get insulin because your A1C is over 10, and they're like, nope, I'm not gonna do that. Give me the bare minimum, and I'm gonna fix this, and they have fixed it, and they have they transformed their health to the point where within 6 months they're not taking medications.
So that would give RFK's argument credence that it's.
But then, on the other hand, I had some patients like, "Oh, you're on the first stages of diabetes. You need to, fix your lifestyles and whatnot." And they're like, "Nah, you know what? Just give me a pill. I'm not gonna do anything." So it's just, I think that it's the mentality, and
It's the mentality.
And unfortunately, from what I've seen, it's the majority of the mentality is like, yeah, I get scared a little bit, fix a little bit, and then I go back to my old habits.
But the system, the way it's built now, and the way it's incentivized now, and I know you work in a urgent care or a walk-in clinic, so it's not really, they're not really your regular patients all over and over, right? The system is built to where it does not incentivize spending time with them, getting to know their food history. It's just, what's the issue? Here's a pill. Next. That's the system right now.
I think like I did urgent care for several years. Now I'm in the family medicine, so I do have like patients.
Okay.
It depends. It really depends on the provider. I mean,
so you are able to do some of that.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
So there might be, it's like everything, some providers might be just like, hey, you know what? We have just a little bit of time allocated for the visit, and I got to do all these things, and the next patients are already waiting. So unfortunately, sometimes the patients need way more time than what's allocated. So we just have to bring them back in for a follow-up visit to see how they're doing. And the good thing is we have a lot of resources. I don't necessarily think that the system is built just like, oh, you have diabetes, here's a pill, see you in 3 months. Oh, you worsen the diabetes, here's a second pill, see you in 3 months. I mean, it could be, but that's up to the providers. Like, how much time we explain to them. And unfortunately, many patients they need more than once reinforcement on what they can and can't do. But the good thing is we have resources. They have nutritionists that we can get on board. We have a nurse that can talk to them a little bit more about how to check the sugars, about what to eat, about exercises. And then, I mean, we don't have to necessarily see them every 3 months. We can see them before, especially if we're pushing more for lifestyle changes rather than medication, and to make sure they're controlling their whatever it is, sugar. Usually the ones that you can monitor daily will be the blood sugars and the blood pressures. I mean, like the cholesterol and all that, that requires a blood test. So it can be, yes, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Like I'm almost always behind my documentation. That's what takes the longest, because I try to spend more time with them.
But that's also the good thing about research.
Oh,
we spend. I mean, the patients that come here, they're VIP.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we spend time, and then they have our numbers. They call us. They text us.
And you look at every line item of the lab results. I mean, you look at and the PIs look at trends.
Yeah. So, and then we don't do lab work every 3 months. We do lab work every visit,
like every week.
And so for some studies every week, some others every 2.
And we've cut
like
things.
Every month. Yeah,
we've cut things for the providers.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Dr. Joe, your patient has, I don't think you knew this.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, we didn't. And then they freak out, and then they tell the MAs, hey, give us a copy.
Yeah.
So research is on top of the healthcare. I remember we do ECGs regularly, right?
Oh, yeah.
One of the MAs said, hey, send us the last ECG because we haven't done one. And by law, we're supposed to have. We've bailed them out a few times because of the quality of the research gives.
Yeah. Research, it's a different world. Not a world that we're used to in the regular clinic, just because of the timing. And then so we do labs, we do ECGs, the education, and then the resources we give the patients. I mean, research it's now that I'm more involved, I
and now that you're a site owner, you and I discuss how do we get our coordinators more engaged? How do we get consistently more visits a week, not just keeping the same and getting comfortable? How do we do other kind of studies? We're always looking to push, because we're a growing company.
Yeah, and I mean, we only have 5 total employees, but we're always looking for ways to keep them engaged. Yeah. And then not only that, we're not even that busy yet, and we're already thinking at what point are we gonna need to hire another person to come over and help.
Admin, yeah.
So.
But all in all, and we'll leave it for future episodes because people have been demanding more mid-level content.
Oh, yeah,
so
sure.
You'll be the resident mid-level provider, guest guru.
There you go.
Like, subscribe, comment, share. Thank you, Jaime. He does have a LinkedIn. It's underneath this video and in the show notes. If you're listening, go connect with Jaime right now. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Hey, if you guys like that kind of content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Stay tuned for more videos.